Well, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. My name, as Holly said, is Nicola Steel. I'm the founder of JJP Talent Solutions, and there's a little flyer on your chair that tells you a little bit more about how I help recruit, attract and retain people for your teams. I'd also like to introduce each of you by a 60-second introduction. April, if we start with you, if you could give us 60 seconds about you and also why International Women's Day is important to you.
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is April. I have been in the tech industry basically from the day I left high school. I was one of the really lucky ones that didn't need a degree to become a software engineer. I was self-taught. So over that time period, I have been across both software engineering, business analysis, and then also over the last, I want to say maybe 7 years, I've been in product management. So really, really fun and exciting time. I love being in the tech industry. But the reason why International Women's Day is particularly important to me is because I have stories where my grandmother tells me that she still had to get written approval from my granddad to get birth control. She's still alive, she's not dead. So that means that that's really, really recent that we have had that kind of oppression across females and women. And so International Women's Day for me is a recognition of how far we have come, but also an acknowledgement and an accountability factor for how far we still have to go.
Wow, that's incredible. So, and your grandmother was brought up in Australia?
Oh, yes, in Gunnedah, which is in, I think, New South Wales. So, yep, very much so. Cotton farmer.
And Damana, what about you? Tell us a little bit about you and why International Women's Day is important to you.
Well, firstly, hi Brisbane. Happy Smash the Patriarchy Day, which I think should answer my part of that question. I'm 25 years a software engineer. I'm one of the grandmas out there. I did do a degree. I was lucky to pick the right thing that I wanted from, when I was 16 to do. And I've managed to travel the world and do some cool stuff on it. So I worked for big tech. I just came back from Amazon. I'm ex-Microsoft. I've worked a lot in Australia. I've built a lot of things that you guys use. And that's my happy place. I like building things as an engineer. International Women's Day. I don't like purple cupcakes. I don't think they're going to change the world. But I do think that we're having better conversations now. And we're having those conversations including a lot of people, men, women, other minorities. And I think that's really important. So I'm re-engaging after boycotting International Women's Day for a good 7 to 10-ish years.
Awesome.
All about the conversation. And Dinesh, now there's something quite obvious that you are not a woman, but tell us a bit more about you and why International Women's Day is important for you as well.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for giving me the privilege of being here and trusting me to be a part of this conversation. Mm-hmm. I am a doctor and I'm a lawyer as well, and I have a spinal cord injury. This happened not far from here in 2010. I lost the use of my fingers and everything below the chest from a car accident. So who's been there for me since this happened? It's been my mum. She's been there for me since day one. She's shaped the way I think. She's always made me think that anything's possible. She's been a fighter. She's had so much courage to move us from a war-torn country to Australia to rebuild life and to get her son through a spinal cord injury and to help him become a doctor. She gave up everything, marriage, career, to do that. So my mum is the number one reason why I'm here. And the other thing is there was a lot of resistance to me becoming a doctor after I got the spinal cord injury. A lot of people said that it can't be done, that it shouldn't be done. But the people that stood with me when I couldn't didn't have a disability, didn't use a wheelchair, but many of them were women. And it's because of them that I'm here, and it's because of my mum that I'm here. And these are just some of the reasons why this is important to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Dinesh, and all that support that you got over that time. And if you want to hear more of Dinesh's story, you have your book, Stronger, which is fabulous. It's a really interesting book. Claudia, let's talk about you. What's your story and why is International Women's Day important to you?
Hi everyone, I'm Claudia. So I'm currently still in uni. I'm in my second year of a bachelor's degree of mechatronic engineering and computer science. And the reason that International Women's Day is so important to me is because in my degree and even in high school, there's no equity. We're still very, very far off the 50-50 representation that we're striving for. I think in my course, there are currently 7 girls and this is 2023. And we've been having this conversation for a long while. So I'm really passionate about making change, bringing things forward. And I feel like if you can't see a role model, you can't really be it. So just providing more role models for young students, people in high school willing to pursue like STEM degrees, that's why it's important to me.
That's fantastic. But what isn't fantastic, it's 7 out of how many people on your course?
I think maybe 60.
So it's getting a little bit better, but still not very good at all.
Not yet.
And Mary, last but by no means least, tell us about you.
Okay, so first of all, I need to say, normally when I'm holding a microphone, I'm at karaoke, so watch out. My name is Mary Callaghan. I work for Hitachi Energy. I'm a product manager. International Women's Day is important to me because of all the fabulous women I've met along the way. I've had great mentors from my mother, who was an incredible woman. She was 40 when I was born and I was the youngest of 7. Wow. But there was nothing that woman couldn't do, nothing she wouldn't try and nothing she wouldn't encourage us to do. I knew equality, and from the time I was born, even though I had 4 older brothers and 2 older sisters, we were equal in the house and everybody had a voice. And my mother was told to leave school at the age of 11 because she contradicted the teacher on a multiplication exercise on the blackboard, and my mother was right. And she was told to get out of school because there's nothing they could teach her. And she was an incredible woman. So for women of all ages, I look across the panel here, there's babies here beside me. They're younger than my girls, and to all the fabulous women in the room, and also to the men in the room supporting the fabulous women. I'll call you fabulous as well, lads. So looking forward to a good evening, and thanks very much for the inclusion, Nicola. Thank you, Mary.
And your mum sounds absolutely incredible and quite a character. So.
Yeah, she was. God bless her. An amazing woman. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So let's kick off with the questions. Claudia, you may be the youngest, but I'm going to kick off with you actually, because you mentioned about your university degree, and I'd like to hear a bit more about your experience at both school and also at uni when you decided to pursue a career in engineering.
It's a really good question. My love of engineering actually started all the way back when I was 5. My mum is a primary school teacher, and when I got into school, she decided that instead of going through prep in grade 1, she'd take me and my brother on a 2-year caravan trip around Australia. And that was really fabulous. And it was as we were traveling through the more disadvantaged rural areas that I began to see the disparity between the beautiful Australian landscape and the place that I grew up and the places that some people really close to us were living in. And I thought, what can I do about this? And then I discovered something called humanitarian engineering, and ever since then, that's what I wanted to do. But going into school, I kind of forgot about that because there wasn't really any push for girls like me to do engineering, to do science, to do maths. And it wasn't until year 10 that engineering was announced as a subject we could choose. And I was really excited to finally get to do engineering. But as soon as I got into the class, I realized I was the only girl out of about 40 students, and no one took me seriously. I think the worst part was the teacher. She didn't even take me seriously. I think I was the only one who listened to her, and because of that, she would actually make me clean up after everyone to kind of get some control over the class. And that was really, really uninspiring. And from then I was actually thinking about dropping engineering, but I had the wonderful opportunity to go on exchange to Japan for 3 months. And when I was over there, it was just amazing to see the difference between how the Japanese teachers were treating the students and saying what subjects they could and couldn't do. They said we could do whatever subjects we wanted and that we were all equal in whatever we wanted to pursue. So coming back to Australia, I kind of had a stronger drive to do the things that I wanted to do because I love science and I love maths. And then going into university, I thought, okay, university, it's 2023, everyone should be allowed to do whatever they want, there should be no judgment. But even then, I was wrong. While it was better and there were more women in my courses, because I'm studying computer science and engineering, there still wasn't nearly close to half. And even in my tutorials, when I'd ask a question, people, the tutors, would just ignore me sometimes, or someone else would talk over me and I wouldn't really get a chance to say something. So from that, this year I've actually applied and been accepted to be a tutor for that very course that I was being ignored in. So hopefully I'll be able to bring a bit more equity to that.
You are amazing. You've achieved so much, and you're 19 now, I think, aren't you? And it's great that it's actually through travel that you've got changed that mindset to a certain extent. But thank you very much for that, Claudia. And
No worries.
fantastic. And Damana, I'm going to turn to you now, because you mentioned that you're a 25-year veteran in computer science.
Started when I was 3.
Yeah. Wow, you look fabulous.
Thank you.
But so you've got 25 years on Claudia, for example. How have you overcome those challenges of being a woman in what has been a very male-dominated industry and still is?
That's a good question. First, Claudia, mine was 5 out of 95, 5 women. And just so you know, all the 5 women graduated, so we can talk about that. It's an interesting place. You have to develop thick skin, and I wish that wasn't the case. People talk about being resilient, and I have a really mixed set of feelings towards that word. I am resilient, but I wish I had never had to be. So I don't wish it on the rest of you. But resilience does matter. I'm also extremely good at ignoring what everybody else thinks and asking until I get the answer I want. Ask my parents. But yeah, I learned that nobody else was going to let me in. I had to open the door myself. I walked in. I experienced shame and rejection and condescension and all that kind of stuff. And I just realized that being a black woman taught me one thing. That's your problem, not mine. And racism is not my problem. It's the problem of the racist. Sexism is not my problem. It's the problem of the male. I couldn't speak about it in the past. Now I'm loud about it, trust me. But yeah, I think that one thing that I did was I took all the opportunities I could and I ignored the haters. Unfortunately, a lot of them were women as well. And we don't say that, but like, go out and support the women around you. If you ever want to hit her with a stick, don't. Go and like have a conversation with her. But I had some great mentors, both men and women, and I think I got through it by having a great network and a great group that supported me. And like everyone on this panel, my mum is awesome, and she would just, if I came home upset, she would just be like, yeah, ignore them, they're idiots. They're just jealous. And I just think, oh, she says all these things, but they helped me get through.
Yeah.
So have support, don't listen to the haters, listen to tons of Beyonce and stuff like that. It really helps. But yeah, I think it's like just treading your own path and not listening to everybody else telling you can't.
And I think what's interesting you said there as well about women supporting each other, which isn't always the case.
No, because men set us against each other. The patriarchy does. Not individual men. I actually like you guys. I'm talking about the patriarchy. But they do set us against each other. And we have to resist that and being incentivized to fight each other and compete with each other.
I also love the fact that you were a little bit hard work as a child. Both mine are, so I'm hoping they're going to be as successful as you one day. But
I don't know.
we'll see.
It's interesting.
Dinesh, so you've got quite a unique perspective on navigating the system, overcoming structural challenges from your own perspective, and also as you've observed women. What's your advice?
I think when we see something happening that's not right, and we see it in the workplace, right, I think we just have to call it out. So when I was really struggling to get a job, so in Queensland, all of the medical graduates, if you're a domestic student, you're guaranteed a job. I also had a scholarship with Queensland Health, which meant that I was already contracted to work for them. But after I got the spinal cord injury, they just said, no, it's going to be an issue. So there are some doctors, some women who have become very close friends with now. They spoke up despite the risks to their careers. They spoke up a lot, and some of them actually offered up a part of their salary, and they said, we'll just take money off the table and we'll pay his salary if you just let him work. So I think just calling things out and just being loud and vocal when you see things is really important. I was in Melbourne last night and came back to better weather today. But someone asked me at an event, they said, all these institutions and all these big companies and big businesses are scary, and how do we change them? And I think this is a misconception that we have. Is actually, I think the institutions are more scared of us. And the companies, it doesn't take much to change their behavior. So we, together, are really loud and powerful as a voice. And if we flip that, we can actually start to hold a lot of these things to account. So we just need to be loud and vocal together. And it's 2023, these things can happen. The other piece of advice is to send the elevator down when you do make it back down for others, and to be visible. Yesterday, I caught up with 3 students at Melbourne University, all female medical students, all have a disability. 2 of them use a wheelchair, 1 of them use crutches. When I was going through, there wasn't a single medical student with a wheelchair. One of them told me that she lived in Singapore. She just saw a YouTube video of me and thought, I can do medicine too, and applied and got in. And it was the coolest thing to see her. So I think that visibility is important when you can be one, because someone will follow your footsteps.
That's a wonderful story, and that's a little like Claudia said about being a role model and people being able to see that, and she saw you. And I think you've got a group of loud and vocal women here making their points clear. So thank you, Dinesh, you're a brave man. April, we I think we all now appreciate the importance of diversity in teams. But how can leaders attract more diverse talent in their teams, would you say?
This is actually a conversation that Damana and I were having a little bit earlier this afternoon, which is that it's all well and good to have your little DEIB disclaimers and those little, we are inclusive of everyone, and your attempt to change those job descriptions and all of that top of the funnel kind of attraction, right? Where you try to get the CVs in through for you to do the perusing, maybe even the blind CV review and things like that. And that actually isn't the way, I believe, that you can attract good talent. You attract good talent by being 100% authentic as a leader and by actually being a human being that recognizes other human beings. All too often, a lot of individuals, when they start their workforce career or, throughout their career, will have one or two stories of just that really piece of shit boss, and that's always because that boss is in it for the wrong reasons. They may be egotistical, they may want power for whatever which reason it may be, but they give you that really shitty experience. And it happens especially a lot to women and other minorities. We just seem to cop it. And so, you see, even though we still have a long way to go with individuals and women wanting to come through into the tech pipeline, we have a leaky pipe problem where they drop out. And it's due to the lack of frameworks and scaffolding that really actually follows that attraction element through. So when I think about my own career and, my very first job, I spoke about how I hadn't even done a university degree, but I was in an engineering team of 160 people and there were 3 women. I was the 3rd female that was hired. So, when I got hired and we had our town hall that Friday and it was, and we now have 3 females in the team. And it's like, there's the diversity hire, and almost immediately you could tell that you just weren't taken seriously. And so for myself as a leader now, when I lead my software engineers and my team members, I want every single one of them to know that I see them. I see you for who you are. I'm not going to apply the cookie cutter team leader training that I got given back when I became a people leader the first time. I'm going to take the time to get to know who you are. I'm going to take the time to get to know what it is that makes you tick. And I want to see you succeed. And I was very nervous coming to this panel tonight. And so I actually pulled out a card that I got from one of the teams that I left a few years ago, who had given me a personal card separate to the company card that gets given when you leave an organization. And my team members had said things in it that I had changed their lives and that, they can't wait to work with me again. And, I have recommendations like that on my LinkedIn as well. And they mean so much more to me than my boss's recommendation that follows with me. I couldn't give a shit about what my boss says about me, but my team members, that means the world. And I will carry that card with me for the rest of my life, because that's how you attract good talent. By being authentic, anyone that wants to work with me can simply ask any of my team members and get an honest response. So that's my biggest piece of advice to anyone here looking to get into leadership, is be authentic about it. Don't just hide behind the initiatives, the fluffy initiatives that you see out there. See that individual for being the human being that they are and follow through that with them. And that will be how you can attract that good talent.
That's fantastic, April. Really, really wonderful. And actually that moves really nicely to you as well, Mary, because I think you and I had a similar conversation about your teams. So I'm going to give you the microphone in a second. But just a minute, you've got one. How have you embedded equity and inclusion in your teams?
So first of all, I'd like to say that probably for the first third of my life, I didn't know equity and inclusion was a thing. I didn't know it was missing, because it definitely wasn't missing in my life.
It was not.
It was not missing in my life. Mm-hmm. When I came this side of the world, I came here for a year in 1989, and I'm still here. And even though English is my first language, I felt like it wasn't. When I was speaking to people, I would get these glazed looks, which many people in this room probably still get. And then I would try repeat the question or the sentence or modify what I said to be understood, because if you're not understood, you can't be included. So I've always been aware of that. With regard to my person, I've always believed that whether it's the person putting the milk in the fridge in the kitchen or a visiting exec from New York, they deserve the same good morning and the same smile. And I practice that. They're core values that I was brought up with and I've grown with. In terms of my team, when I get a new team member, and it wouldn't be just me that interviewed them, I would make sure a peer interviewed them, and maybe a more senior software engineer. So we had a view of the person from different aspects of the role that was, and the different reporting lines. And on day one, when they'd come into my team, I'd say, I am gifting you with my trust. You are part of the team today. It starts today. Right, you're on probation. You need to go through that formal probation process, but you're part of the team. I'll have somebody buddy with you. I'll have somebody tell you where the best coffee is. My door is open. What do you need? I'm here. And I would, in a nice, like a smiling Cheshire cat, say, you have my trust. It's yours to keep. And invariably, that made them comfortable, and they felt they were part of the team. In all the years that I've been a leader and a manager, I've only ever had to manage out 2 people, and both experiences were unpleasant. Both were surprised, even though I felt I was telling them, that's not good, we're going to do this, how can I help you, blah, blah, blah. And even though I had HR helping me with the protocol and the process and, not getting sued, it was hard and unpleasant. But when I looked at what not having them exit the team looked like, it was an easy choice, because I wasn't going to have them be a drain on the rest of the team, my tribe, doing their stuff. And that's the way it worked out. The other thing to include people is you've got a team of mixed personalities. Some like banter, some are very technical, so they don't want small talk, just let's get down to business. Don't ask me how my weekend was. I don't care. We're here to do this. Being aware of your communication with your different types of personalities. I remember one particular time I was asking this very technical person a question and his eyes glazed over, and I thought, right, he hasn't understood the accent. So I asked it again, but in fact, for him, he's heard the question, he's analysing what I'm asking, he's formulating his response, and me asking him again, it's just noise. So it's like, shh. So knowing that, knowing when you're in a room with your people who's talking and what they're saying, but also knowing who's not talking and why. Is it they don't feel confident? Is it they don't understand the subject? Is it they don't want to speak out loud in this forum? And following up with them so that everybody should have a voice at the table. Everybody should feel safe and not be afraid to speak out. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I ask questions that aren't technically sound, but they're not stupid. They're good questions because I don't know the answer. So communication is the key, in my view.
Absolutely. And you, in giving that trust.
100%, making people feel safe, It's an employment, but you spend more time with those people than you do with your family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It has to be enjoyable. And if it's not enjoyable, you're not in the right place.
And I kind of get you from what you're saying as well about equity and inclusion. It wasn't really something I thought about when I was young. And I didn't, because I had a similar upbringing to you. And then realising, yeah. Well, my father was an alpha male, well, he still is alive, but an alpha male and had 2 daughters.
Yeah.
So his girls could do whatever they wanted
Yeah.
because he was quite a tough man and he brought us up that way.
Yeah.
So it wasn't something that I really experienced, but so many other people do. So that's the
100%,
importance of having these
yeah.
conversations.
And I'd be a different generation to most people here on the panel, but it is interesting that for the first third of my life, I didn't even know it was a thing.
Absolutely.
Best.
Dinesh, I'm going to ask you a question now. Now, when you and I spoke about this event a couple of weeks ago, you gave me some really great examples of equity, diversity and inclusion. So I'd like to hear more of your perspective and point of view.
I was actually just thinking about this earlier, and I have a friend who she's a plastic surgeon and a pilot. So a commercial, yeah, I don't.
You're just a lawyer and a doctor, and she's a plastic surgeon and a pilot.
Actually, I started flying last year, so
Oh, sorry.
I couldn't let that pass. But I remember seeing this conversation with her and a few other people, and she said that I just don't want to be. I don't want to be a female surgeon. I just want to be a surgeon. And I thought that was. I never thought about that. You know, I thought that was a really insightful and important point. And I don't want to be a doctor with a disability. I guess I just want to be a doctor, and I want to be the best doctor that I can be. And so I think when we talk about diversity and equity, it's probably where everyone has an equitable opportunity to try to do whatever they want, and there are no barriers because of who they are or what they are, and we give everyone that equitable opportunity to try, and these labels don't matter, and hopefully one day we just don't have to have this conversation. So for the International Day of People with Disability, I was asked last year, what would you like to see out of this day? I just thought it'd be nice not to need this day at all, where we get to a point where people are just people, and it's normal to see a doctor using a wheelchair in a hospital, or someone with a disability doing whatever in the media or fashion or whatever it might be. And so that's where I hope we get to, where we don't need to have these conversations. But I guess to get there, we do need to have the conversations and challenge things.
It's an interesting question. I think the International Day of Disability was about 2 days ago, was it?
No, that was I think that was the International Day for Wheelchairs or something.
Oh,
I didn't even know
sorry.
that was a thing. That was a thing. So.
But the other thing I was going to say is people go, oh, International Women's Day. Why don't we have an International Men's Day? Well, there is one. But we don't really hear about it quite so much because there's not such a need for the conversation.
Isn't it just the other 364 days of the year?
There could also be International Children's Day as well, if you've met my kids. But it's interesting as well that she doesn't want to just be a female surgeon. So you've got the language like girl boss and a female CEO and all that kind of thing, and avoiding those labels. And Claudia's head was nodding a lot as you were saying that. April, I'm going to ask you the next question. So you've discussed this a little bit, but what do you think leaders need to do to really set up people for success so that they can thrive in their teams?
I was really, really resonating with what you were saying, Mary, actually, because it really does come down to, you know, recognizing who your people are. But when I think about, you know, setting up for success, you have an obligation at that team level, and then you have the obligation at the individual level as well. And what success looks like for, you know, those individuals as well as the team collectively can look vastly different. And it comes down to recognizing what those differences are and planning for them. And that is your entire job as a leader. When you're in middle management, you get a lot of shit because people are like, oh, middle management. But it is actually one of the hardest jobs that you will ever do, because you have to be the voice of the people up and you have to be the voice of the company down. And playing that double agent can be really, really hard. And you do ultimately, at the crux of it, you do have to pick a side. You can't ever play the double agent for the entire time. And so setting your team up for success, you need to really commit to what kind of leader it is that you want to be in order for success for that individual to look the way that it needs to. That is the ultimate outcome. So what do I mean by that? Well, Mary, you spoke about having to manage out 2 individuals, and like for that person, they're getting fired. But if they were getting managed out, were they really happy? Were they really happy at their job? And so that's the way that I like to frame it in my mind. And that could just be like, you know, what's it called? Cold comfort. But for me, I'm setting that individual up for success, because if I do have to manage that individual out, I will always do it with care and compassion and make sure that they have somewhere else to go and really set them up for success in their life. Mm-hmm. You are responsible for the well-being of an individual that spends more time at that place of work with their team members than they do with their family or at home with their dog or doing their hobbies, whatever it looks like that they do outside of work. The way that our society is structured is that they will spend more time working on things for their employer. So you need to have that kind of care and consideration for them at that level in order to set them up for that success. So what I was saying earlier about taking the time to get to understand who they are, that's the ticket, that's the pathway to how you find what their success looks like. And then the next part of your job is then holding them to that account and not just being their friend, but being that person that's going to push them and is going to get them to that next level and get them to where they want to go in whatever way that looks like. So taking the time to get to know how that looks and taking the time to understand the team dynamic versus the individual dynamic is how you will find the path to success for each of those people that are in your team and your team collectively.
So very much leading with that compassion as well, but also accountability and challenging them to get to that next level.
Yeah, exactly.
And like you said, like Mary said, that sometimes you have to cut people loose for their own good too.
Yeah, exactly. If someone isn't producing the work that's commensurate with the role that's required, and you know, and especially like, you know, that 9 times out of 10, they aren't happy either, you know, and so it's one of those things of finding out how you can help them move into a space that they are going to be happy in and where they are going to thrive.
Absolutely. So in a way, helping them, as you say, with compassion. And Damana, one of the things that I love when you describe things, you use the word happy a lot. Which is great. And you talk to me about building happy workplaces. So you've built a number of high-performing software engineering teams. How have you built these happy workplaces, and how have you reduced attrition and improved retention in those happy workplaces?
Yeah, I think I'm going to repeat a lot of what everyone said. It's about acknowledging individuals. But the other thing is, when I get up in the morning, I want to go to work. Like I want to be there. And if I don't, then I want to leave. So I don't want my engineers to leave. So I make a happy place for them, which means psychological safety is a big thing. You hear the word a lot, but what it means is that you're safe to come in and be whoever you are. I banned the word cultural fit on my team. I couldn't care less I don't want you to all be the same. Like, no, that's not what I want. I want people to come in and be themselves, and I will, with other people, work out how they fit together. So there's a few ways to build high-performing teams. One of them is to make it, I think Mary used the word tribe, and I never use the word family. I think that's just weird, but I do think tribe is a good way of putting it. It's a bunch of people that want to be in the same place, have the same drive, and like working with each other. Like, they just want to be there. So it's about good work, good people, and good money. That's what it comes down to. Don't lie to yourself. Those are the three things people care about. So what I try to find out is, what order is it important to you? And in Australia, everyone's really shy about the money conversation. I'm like, show me the money. And I work out what they want. And sometimes it might be something else that drives them. They might want to be very technical in 10 years or whatever it is. So I find out what they want, being an individual, and try to work with them to get that. Mm-hmm. Or move them off to another team if I can't give it to them, that kind of thing. Yeah. But I always aim for people to be happy. I don't care if you do a 40-hour week or a 10-hour week. I just want you to build what we're building and make sure you do your job. Mm-hmm. Right? That's not turning up and checking in. We are not factory workers. We're knowledge workers. We're different. And so that you have to treat people differently. All our management books that everyone based management on were based on factory workers, were based on that industrial world. Throw those away. They're not real anymore. You're working with humans. And so that's what I try to do. Treat them as humans, make them happy. If I'm not happy, they're probably not happy. And I give lots of snacks. So even virtually, I'm always sending people snacks. Or Lego. Engineers like Lego. So when Lego turns up, how could you not be happy?
Absolutely. It sounds like the perfect team.
So that's the key, basically.
Bring
snacks and Lego.
Just bring dips, nibbles and dips. And
the other thing is, to be a happy person, you get back what you put out. Yeah. And that's not always easy, but you're the leader, and your mood will control the room. Mm-hmm. So be aware, especially when you're a big personality, or you're a manager. We talk about the idea that some managers throw pebbles and there are ripples in the water. Big managers at the levels I've worked at, you throw boulders. Once I turned around to a bunch of engineers and said, I wonder what would happen if we built this. This was at Amazon. I came back 3 days later and they'd built it. I didn't want them to. I was just wondering what it would be like. So, it's taking that care and being aware of that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And I like as well the fact that you said we shouldn't all be the same, and I hope you find it quite a diverse group of people with all of us as well.
For sure.
Thank you for that, and your team sounds fabulous.
It is. If anyone wants to join, I'm hiring.
Oh, there you go.
Data analysts and software engineers.
Excellent.
I can do neither of those things, but I'll come for this.
I need a pilot.
Right, we're going a little bit off. Mary, back to you. We're going to change the conversation a little bit and talk about emerging technology. So, what do you think the impact of emerging technology will be on gender equality and leadership?
So when I think of emerging technologies, I automatically go to AI. Mm-hmm. I was watching the 7:30 report and Q&A a couple of weeks ago, and it was a hot topic. This new chat, GPT, has already 200 million users, which I find incredible. It can write a politician's speech. It can analyze any amount of data. It can do anything. They were interviewing university students about, it can cheat. And one sound young man said, well, there was always avenues you could use to cheat. Just because it's there doesn't mean it might be a bit more sophisticated, but you're only cheating yourself, which I as a mature lady, I thought, good on you, you were brought up right. In relation to how it will change leadership, it will supplement the factory floor, it will supplement call centres, historic data collection, but it won't supplement leadership. It can do time management, task management, people management. It can do all of that stuff. But all the values that we spoke about as leaders, it can't replicate. Authentic, compassionate, genuine, vulnerable, respectful, sense of humor, all those qualities that make not a good leader, a great leader, somebody that doesn't even have to say, follow me. People will want to follow them. People will be inspired by them. AI and emerging technologies will supplement and take away some tasks that none of us want to do, but it's part of the job, so we do it. And the big thing will be to educate the next generation coming up, that AI is fabulous, but you need to learn how to work alongside it, not let it dictate what you do. And that's the big thing. But circling back to all of those things we spoke about, from my first question, equity and inclusion, emerging technologies don't even come into the picture. Yeah.
So coming back to trust, compassion, empathy, persuasion, that...
I did the Brene Brown course last year, and one of the questions was, can you be vulnerable before you trust? And initially I thought, no way on earth. I need to trust somebody before I can be vulnerable. But I'll put the question to you guys now. You've seen how I speak about my team. Would you trust me? Have I shown vulnerability tonight? Yes. I've got my heart on my sleeve when I talk about people. I'm an IT professional that is more passionate about people than I am about technology. I leave that to the very clever technology R&D architects that I have. I'm a people person. So again, AI and emerging technologies will replace lots of very important things, but not authentic leadership.
It's interesting about that vulnerability. And it is quite brave to
and
allow
even
yourself.
as a mother, I have 2 girls. Ironically, as I said, I came here in '89 for a year. My eldest daughter went to London for a year 10 years ago. So as a mother, I'm this proud Irish woman, got everything under control. Girls, don't you worry about that. But now they're women, and I brought them up, and they were my biggest challenge and my biggest achievement. And I'm so proud of them. 2 kind, young women. And I'm okay to be vulnerable with them now. Like, it's almost like role reversal, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But again, I'm babbling now as Irish people do. And my name's Mary. I had 1 glass of red wine.
I was going to say, have you had any wine yet, Mary?
The question was about AI, and I won't repeat myself.
No worries. Thank you very much. And I think kindness is important as well.
Kindness,
so
100%.
absolutely. Claudia, we started with you, and I think we'll finish with you as well. So the first question was about your experience in school and university, and quite a lot of the people here will have children themselves, some may even be educators as well. So what advice would you give as a young person to improve that ratio in technology to parents and educators?
I think probably the biggest piece of advice that I would give to anyone, but especially to educators, is just to start young, because I'm seeing a lot more encouragement for women in these fields in university, but the sad thing is most girls who grow up and want to do engineering or technology don't even make it that far. Like the other day, I was thinking about how in the middle of last year, I founded a virtual reality emerging tech society. And I really wanted to have an executive team that had equity, that represented everyone who I wanted to be part of the club. But when I got the executive applications, I realized it wasn't up to me, because I got so few female applications. And that was really sad to see, given that I'd advertised it to everyone and made special care to show that I did want women, of course, in my executive team. But on the other hand, it's really good to see that at university we are reaching out to the younger generation, and there are a lot of workshops I've been a part of. Recently I did a workshop with the RoboGals for the Barden Girl Guides, and it was so lovely to be with a bunch of female engineering students helping 4, 5, 6-year-old girls learn the very basics of how to program micromelons, of how to code, and telling them what an engineer was, and showing them that we were engineering students who were female, and they could be female engineering students or female technology students as well. And I guess it's a recurring theme here, but as Dinesh was saying, that vision is so important. And on the parent side, we've had another recurring theme of amazing parents, but I'll just add to that and say my parents were so supportive. They didn't even know what I wanted to do, but they basically said, just go for it, see how you like it. And I think that was really inspiring to me and helped me kind of bridge those obstacles in high school and make it to university. But one of my friends who also wanted to do engineering, we went through high school together, and we'd both said, oh yeah, we're going to do engineering when we get to uni. We were both really keen on it. And then as soon as we graduated, she said, oh, I'm doing architecture now. And I said, didn't you really want to do engineering? And she said, yeah, I really do want to do engineering, but I just don't see myself in that role. And I said, why not? And she said, well, have you seen the engineering classes at school? I don't fit in there. I don't want to be a part of that. And she's really good at architecture, but I think she missed her calling for doing engineering. And I hope that one day she does get that encouragement and does find her way back to that.
Thank you, Claudia. And your example of the clubs that you were trying to bring more women in, I think is a really good example on a micro scale about what the industry is like as a whole, that teams actively do want more women. I think leaders do, but women actually applying is more difficult. And why didn't you have more female applicants to that club, do you think?
I think that marketing a club as an emerging tech club does unfortunately attract a particular group of people. And as those people show up to events, those women come along and they see that they're one of maybe a few women in the room, and they think that maybe that club isn't for them, even though, as you said, employers are trying so hard to make them feel comfortable and to make them stay there. It's kind of a problem that originates a lot earlier. So starting young, I guess, is just so important.
When they're little, like 5-year-olds travelling around Australia in caravans, that kind of age.
Exactly.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. That's fabulous. So those are all the questions for the panel. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask the panel at all? Have we got a microphone at the back, Holly, or shall I give mine? Oh, we can just share this, yeah.
Thank you.
If you just raise your hands.
Could I make a point about that technology question? You were talking about technology earlier, Mary. So I was talking to this medical student yesterday, the 3 that I met, and one of them, she made the point that so the first 2 years are basically classes, and then the next 2 years are in hospitals in medical school. But she said, fortunately, COVID happened when she started medical school. So that meant most of the classes were virtual, and no one could actually see that she had a disability or that she was a migrant or any of these things. And so I think, in a way, technology is actually the great equalizer and tester of our biases, in a way, because it can take away all that and really equalize people. So I think it's had the potential to do that. It's done it for me. Using technology, I use it in the emergency department, and using the different tools that I do, I see 25% more patients than my colleagues. So I think technology has the ability to bridge all these gaps as well, including our biases.
Thank you. Cheers. I think as well, I was talking to somebody this evening about, thank you, I've got a loud voice, don't worry, and how technology and COVID has changed the parent dynamic as well, and allowed fathers to be more involved with their children because of technology, but also because of working from home, and it's become more the norm that dads are involved, which has opened up more opportunities, I think, in a kind of natural way for women. Any other questions? Don't be shy.
Hello, panel. I'm the Chief People Officer here at ACS. So I've got a people and culture related question. And I might go to April and potentially Damana as well, just because of some of the topics that you covered. So April, what would be your advice if you're looking for diversity of thought, not just gender, but diversity of thought? What are some of the tips and techniques that you would offer to encourage that in at REA Group?
That's a really good question. So this plays a lot into, I guess, when you speak about the diversity of thought, and not just in terms of gender, my mind immediately goes to both physical disabilities and then also neurodiversity. And I know from lived experience, as well as people within my team, that I'm not always going to speak up in a room if you have a synchronous forum where people want to know what your thoughts are and things like that. And so to help foster that diversity of thought, you need to provide more than one channel and more than one avenue in which to share that thought. So it can't simply be a matter of, for example, in this room right now, asking upon all of you to, do you want to have a microphone handed to you and ask your question right now? Sure as shit not. I would absolutely not do that. Whereas I might reach out on LinkedIn at a later date and ask my questions at that point. And I'd want to know that that is okay. And so for myself as a leader, if I was to have a meeting with somebody, I have always got what I call the quadrant of communication that I like to lean back on. And that is, I always address the what is the topic of this meeting? What is the subject matter that's going through it? Why are we having this meeting? Why is this topic the one that we're talking about today? How it's going to be delivered, how the topic is going to be delivered, what the rollout plan is, as well as the what ifs or the consequences or the benefits or the detractors of this piece of communication. And after having that meeting, I will then have that meeting recorded. I will then send out notes afterwards. I will encourage people to email me. I will encourage people to have a Slack channel where they can chat or share their thoughts that way. Comments, I have got 1,000,001 different ways in which someone can share with me their thought process. And for that reason, I actually I led a remote team a couple of years ago through COVID, where I didn't even actually get to meet half of my team members. They were in the United States. So we had to force that asynchronous communication to occur. And those asynchronous sessions that I held over a period of 3 days, because it was asynchronous and we had a time zone, were some of the most productive and some of the most interesting conversations that I've ever had the pleasure of having. And it just goes to show that the conversation or the real nuggets of gold in those conversations aren't going to just come from this interaction. It could come from the thoughts that happen afterwards So that's probably my biggest tip, is to don't just close off the communication in one avenue, enable a million different ways for that thought process and that diversity of thought to come through.
Wonderful, thank you. What about you, Damana?
I, on the other hand, love microphones. So I have an answer to this question. It's quite succinct, and it usually starts when we're talking about addressing this with someone who's never had to do it. If someone makes you uncomfortable and they're not a walking HR incident, then let them in the room, right? You're naturally uncomfortable because you're a human being. They're different to you. Alarm bells are going off. There are red flags because they don't look like you, they don't sound like you, and they're not sharing the same ideas as you. So I often treat that discomfort and say, like, that's fine. You know, you're welcome in the room. Come in, I want to hear you. And then the second step is actually listening and hearing people. But I always say it, don't hit something with a stick. Like, if you want to do that, ask yourself why. But yeah, that's my usual advice to start.
Thank you.
Have we got any more questions?
Hello. I'll just ask the question to all the panels. What are some tips of like spotting that healthy culture, like inclusive culture in companies? Because I just resigned last week, experiencing kind of sexism, like kind of bullying. And I wasn't expecting that in 2023 in Australia. And the company that I resigned was like perfect on the paper, like non-profit, very good looking, but didn't work out well. So what are the tips of like spotting that healthy, inclusive culture when job hunting?
And who was your question for? Sorry. Anybody?
Yeah, anybody.
The question's about how do you, just correct me if I'm wrong, but spotting a healthy culture that's inclusive. She's just left a role that that was quite sexist when on paper it looked perfect, but in reality
And also
wasn't.
it's like important for international students as well, or foreigners, because if you're Australian and if you grew up here, you kind of know their reputation or like know people who work there, for example. That's easier if you like grew up here, but as who just came to Australia, it's kind of hard to what reputation they got in here, and then like
Yeah, so I think it is very hard. I was actually talking to April earlier about an organisation that I thought was really healthy, and it's not. So it is very hard. It would be hard to do your due diligence, and unless you know people in the organisation that you can network to. So I'm afraid I don't have any great advice on anybody else on the panel. Pardon me?
Does anyone use Glassdoor? Does that work?
There's a lot of unhappy people on Glassdoor.
It can work. Glassdoor can be a really good avenue to look at. I would encourage you to reach out to people that you see on, like, stalk. Find those people on LinkedIn and reach out to them.
Yeah.
And if they seem reserved, if they don't seem like they want to really chat through it, that's a flag. That is an absolute red flag. Whereas, you know, if someone is happy to speak their mind and shares with you both the grievances and the good, that's a good flag, you know, because no company's without the skeletons in the closet. So if someone has the ability and the psychological safety to share with you the good and the bad, that's a pretty green signifier. And I just want to say, I'm so sorry that's happened to you. That is awful. That shouldn't be happening in 2023.
Yeah, and I think it would be very difficult if you are a reserved person that doesn't have a big network, that's not an extrovert, somebody that's an introvert, to actually think, well, can I actually do that? Is that ethical? Whereas it is, you can reach out to people, as April said. I've never done it myself, but it is, be bold. I mean, we were talking today about salaries. What are the 3 things you want? And there's a culture here, I think, and well, I definitely have it. If I ask for more money, do they think I'm hard up? Like, am I worth it? And I've been lucky that I've never had to do that. But I don't know what, your experience is, but I just found it was interesting. Happy, money, and enjoy what you're doing. But the money one it's tricky.
It is.
And maybe HR can tell us, is in your experience, are you open to?
Absolutely. Well, now with the new pay, there's legislation now that allows everyone to share their salary details. So I welcome it.
Mm.
I think, at ACS, I'm actually proud to say that we came from a culture where that was a contentious subject. No more, because we're coming to bring that equity and that fairness, and we look forward to the WGA. For those of you who don't know, that's the workplace equality agency, and they're sort of the regulator or government to ensure that corporates are providing that transparency, that they're breaking barriers, the gender pay gap, etc. So ACS started reporting last year as part of our diversity and inclusion strategic plan. So, but back to your question, Mary, I think now that we're legally allowed to ask one another these questions, corporates are going to have to stand up and actually look at themselves and start putting some parameters in place to ensure that people see that as equitable and fair.
The other, maybe one addendum to what I said for yourself is, if you're not comfortable reaching out to people, find somebody in your network that might do it for you, and it's semi-anonymous, but it's the same information.
You know, the question they ask is, what's your feedback culture like? Because I think that also says something about your culture. If you're open, if you can have hard conversations, that says something about people feeling safe to step forward and speak up. So it might be something to reach out, right?
I kind of don't want to be the person who brings up this topic, because this topic needs to be stopped. Like gender equality needs to be equal when we stop having to talk about this. So yeah, that's what I was like concerned as well. Like when I reach out to people asking these questions, it's kind of I'm kind of initiating it in a way, but also I need to know.
Another avenue you could also consider is talking to recruiters, because they tend to know lots of companies, whether they're working with them as clients or not, and they might not be working with them as a client because they don't want to, because of behaviour like you mentioned. And recruiters can quite often have a wealth of knowledge. So, I mean, reach out, send a connection request, put a message in the connection request, and ask the question, and they might be able to help you, and will come with quite an objective view as well, and might be able to guide you to somebody within that organisation that can have a more realistic opinion as well. But recruiters do tend to have quite a lot of insider information that might be able to help you, or point you in the right direction. Of course, you don't want to cause a problem either, so there's a balance there. Awesome. Were there some more questions, Holly? Or there we go.
I
name is Callaghan. So I'm recently graduate. So we are talking on a balance equity. So it's just out of the box. Curious, as I'm applying for the jobs in the IT sector, like I need a job in entry level because I don't have any technical skills. But most of the time when I apply, there's a condition that you should be a Australian permanent resident or a citizen. So is there equality? So
That's a good question, and sometimes there'll be a reason as to why. So, for example, being a citizen, if it's working for federal government or that aspect, there might be, or permanent residency, because there is actually a genuine need. Sometimes, however, there might not be. So are you on a 485, for example?
yeah,
So, and you guys could possibly answer this question as well, but with a 485 visa, I believe that it expires like after 2-3 years, and then you can apply for permanent residency anyway,
yes.
which gives you longevity. And I think employers quite often are nervous that there isn't that permanency there, but there shouldn't necessarily be a reason why, unless it's a security issue like it would be for federal government. Queensland government might also have similar issues for permanent roles, that you need to be a permanent resident. But what are your thoughts on 485 visas, and can your companies accommodate that? And
We're international, so we hire visas.
So you hire...
It just means that it costs us more to process you. So sometimes people will not want to process your visa because there's an investment in that to keep you in the art. I am not an immigration lawyer. But yeah, there can be a cost associated. What I would say is ignore that stuff. I call that like Blair fine print. Just apply anyway.
I applied like lot many jobs right now, but I'm not getting any reward back. I'm not sure what's the because there's some conditions which we can't fulfill. So I feel it's inequality for us as an international overseas students, because we are not getting that kind of a chance which Australian students or permanent students are getting it. So maybe we are having more skills than that, then also we are lagging behind.
Depends on the company.
Yeah,
It doesn't stop us.
And also, 485, there isn't really any cost involved. They can just start immediately. I think that's a really difficult question about whether it's equality or not, because sometimes there is a legitimate reason. But if you look at those little flyers, there's my email and LinkedIn on there. Thank you very much. And I'll have a chat with you in a little bit more detail.
I just follow you guys on the LinkedIn.
But sometimes, yes, there is a legitimate reason. Sometimes it's just a case of employers put it in the too difficult box, not Damana's, however. So
only because we're global. So
yeah.
Other people aren't.
I hope that answered the question. Thank you.
Add on to this lady's question. My name is Nicola. I'm working as a business development officer for ACA. So this is Education Centre Australia. So I look after professional year. I came across so many professional students who are IT graduates from bachelor's degree and postgraduate degree. I would say majority, like 80% of the students who are enrolled in our professional year, they're employment-based and already find a job in Brisbane City Council, in Queensland Police, all of these. So visa is not an issue. I would say probably how many times you apply for the job is important, and also not only work on your ICT skills, but also your people skills. Like, are you proactive? Can you communicate well? Is your cover letter addressing the criteria points? All of this actually works. Yeah, because I do have a graduate. She's from a non-IT background, works for a retail industry, but she on her vision board, she got EY, Deloitte, all of these big companies on her vision board, and she managed to walk away after maybe 300 of application. Now she's working for EY. Yeah, so I as what April mentioned, forget about your identity. Myself is from a Chinese background, and back to 16 years ago, Australia, probably I would say in my class there were only 2 Chinese, the rest of them all local. Yeah, I have problems finding job as well. It took me 12 years to get back to my dream job, which is post-secondary education. I'm glad that 3 years ago I made it. So have your goal, ultimate goal there, and work towards it. And there are so many inclusive leaders having their transformational leadership style there. It was a culture. So work on your ICT skills, quality of your job application, all that. I think visa is not an issue. Yeah. There are so many good examples.
Thank you very much, Amanda. And that story about the EY girl was really inspiring. Thank you. And maybe you two guys, when we have drinks and nibbles after this, you could talk to each other and help each other. Yes. Is that Olivia Sao? How do you pronounce it? S-H-O?
Sorry,
I haven't got my glasses on. Oh, sorry.
Hey guys, my name is Jab Harsimran, and thanks for giving your fascinating views. I really loved hearing all about things you told, your experiences in your workplaces. And as I was talking to April, that she has like 15 years of experience in her workplace, and I really appreciate that. And when one of you guys told that no question is a dumb question when you don't know the answer about. So recently I was applying for jobs, and you know, when you go through the, like, you give your information and there are certain questions, I found a very fascinating question. You know, when there is an option that are you a minority, are you from a multicultural society, you are an islander, I found a question that are you a woman? So I felt that very fascinating.
Sorry? I couldn't hear what you said there.
Are you a woman?
Are you a woman?
Yeah, and it was a Queensland job in government, like in transport office, and I felt that a bit like awkward. That, like, see, I don't know about it. Like, it's right or wrong, but yeah, I really want your views on that.
It's interesting, I was talking about this today. There's very little data that we can collect on people in Australia. In the US, you can collect everything. You know, what did you have for breakfast? But in Australia, it's very limited. I don't know if Queensland has slightly different laws or not, but we're governed by federal laws that say we can collect gender. So that's one of the few things that we can actually put on, you know, in the data that we collect and report on it. If we try to collect anything else, we'll actually get in trouble if we try to pull on that. It's discrimination. Gender is not considered discrimination. It's one of the really, like, it's legislated federally. So of all the other questions you got asked, you should probably be offended. That one's okay.
No, but I think it's how the question was posed.
Are you a woman?
Yeah. How do you identify yourself? Male, female, other? I don't think
It didn't have that. It didn't have the other. Is that what you meant? Or?
No, it just meant, are you a woman? That was the question.
Oh, okay then.
A peculiar form.
That's just a lazy developer. Needs a better drop-down list.
We all think it's a weird question. That would be not your question, the question on the form. No, it is a question. It was a stupid question on the form, but your question wasn't stupid. Thank you. Do we have any other questions at all?
I'm a software engineer, and I found myself and my peers, female peers, always underestimate ourselves. we're more easily to experience the imposter syndrome, think we are not good enough, or our skills are weaker than the males. So have you ever experienced this, and how do you overcome it? And another question is, I noticed 3 of our panelists are very senior positions. So do you need to compete with your male colleagues? How do you beat them?
Who would like to answer that one?
Do I compete with my male colleagues? No. I win. Not really much of a competition. No. What was the first question? Sorry, can someone summarize it for me? Oh, imposter syndrome, all the time. Oh my gosh. I just hit 6 months probation yesterday, so woo! That's not as big as the fact that I also had a fridge delivered today, which was even bigger than that. I get imposter syndrome. To this day, not as much as I used to, but there are many times when I walk in and think, oh, should I really be here? Don't worry, just fake it till you make it. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think most people here would, and a lot of the time mine comes when I'm having a technical conversation with someone. Like, I've been a principal engineer at Amazon, that's very, very senior. And I still walk into conversations today with, someone who's got 6 years experience and think, oh, I haven't written code for 6 weeks. They'll probably know more than me. So, I still get that. Maybe not everyone does, but I certainly do. And you shouldn't worry if you do. The thing is to realize you're being triggered by something, and then try to dismiss it, or let the feeling go, let it flow over you. It's not true. You can still do the work. And as long as your badge is still working, I figure I'm doing well, because they let me in the building. But yeah, I do, and every day I compete with my male colleagues, even though they're some of the best men I've ever worked with. Everything is a competition, and I think that's part of big tech. They say we eat our own young, so you could work somewhere where you don't have to.
If I could add to that, yes, I suffer imposter syndrome all the time. When Nicola said to me, Mary, I'd like you to sit on the panel, I thought, why would she want me? And I looked at the caliber and the experience and the diversity of my co-panel members and thought, So I spoke to Nicola and I said, just want to know, in my head I'm thinking, she's obviously desperate, she's short of numbers. No, these are real thoughts that went through my head. And Nicola said, because I find you interesting and I think you'd be a good addition. I thought, okay, go me. And when I took on the role that I have now, my predecessor was an engineer, a senior engineer, and I don't have an engineering background. And when they asked me to do the role, I thought, who do they think I am? And it was on short notice. He resigned, and there was it was the year just before COVID. There was a conference in Atlanta, and they said, and we're wondering if you'd go to Atlanta and do the 2 weeks of presentations that he had planned to do. And I'm thinking, I looked at what not doing it looked like, and I didn't like what that looked like. I would have felt that I'd backed away from a challenge, that I would have been regretful, and that motivated me to go and give it a go. I knew it wasn't going to kill me. I might even enjoy it. And it gave me the confidence to accept the role. So it won't be the last time you feel like this, but think about how you got through the last time, the next time it happens.
Thank you very much. And you are interesting.
I know.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, you're kicker.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry. Thanks, Holly.
Hi everyone, I'm Eileen and I'm a designer and just got my job last month, and I've been experienced like a lot of like suffering. That's, as people know, that I'm an international student, graduate. I couldn't find a job. I feel like I'm less competitive with my language, my visa, everything. And so I did compromise a lot with when I'm finding a job. So that time I think, oh, as long as it's a job, it's an IT job, then I take it. Yeah, in the end, that I took my job and I kind of enjoyed, like, because I know that I'm learning stuff. But to be honest, that deeply in my mindset is like, I know I still compromise a lot of things because I'm looking the equity in the culture. I'm looking for a brighter career pathway in the future. But somehow, like in my situation, that I just need to take them to see the most positive things that in my situation. I'm not gonna mention that, but I believe a lot of immigration here, you understand that it's quite a difficult situation. But now I just got a question, like I'm still looking forward to be a leadership in future. I still think that one day I'm gonna to stand a really equal and fair position. But sometimes I feel like I'm losing that quality, that the human quality. Sometimes I feel like I'm getting a bit cold because I need to dealing with tasks. I need to be strong, fighting, and I sometimes feel like I'm not that as sensitive as before. I was really understanding people, and I enjoyed the human relationship. Like I enjoy to see how the people fit in the technology world, but with this experience, I feel like the quality is losing. But I got one question is, what is the, like from your experience, from a junior to be a leadership, what is the quality that you are never ever want to lose?
So the quality
of
the person joining the team.
During the team, during this pathway.
So why don't we, I think, Holly, is that our last question? Why don't each of you, we'll start with you, April, give a quality each about what you think, about what you look for in your team members.
I look for the passion and the tenacity. Don't lose that as you go through. My own career progression was absolutely not linear. I did not have a linear career progression. I ping-ponged and I continued to ping-pong. And I would say that, you will go through tribulations and you will go through basically different waves of where you have regressions in some things and then you have upskilling in others. And so I think the important thing to recognize as you're on this journey is that that's okay and that is so normal. It is so normal for you to regress in one skill set and upskill in another part, because that's just part of what upskilling is. We can't have every single skill under the sun. So if there's one thing that you should fight to retain within yourself, it's that tenacity that's gotten you to where you are, because it will get to where you need to go and where you want to go. So just for my recommendation to you is just to not lose that.
I would say stay kind. Show the kindness you wish you had or that was you would like shown to you. That will never go wasted. I've never found that go wrong.
The big one for me is humility. I think we can get to so many points in our lives, and I've seen it. Everything was taken away from me when I was 25. I've seen it happen to people over and over again. They talk about Ubuntu. We are because of each other, and humility, like just being a good human being to the people and not forgetting where you come from. A couple of years ago, mum emailed me and she said, my son is 5 years old and he has an extremely rare genetic condition and he's starting to use a wheelchair now. And do you have any tips on how I could raise him to be a good, successful man? So I met with the family and I met this little boy and I said, what do you want to do when you grow up? He said, I want to be the CEO of Telstra. So I thought that was really cool, and I contacted Andy Penn, who was the CEO of Telstra at the time, and he set up a time to meet with this little boy, and he took him around the Telstra offices. He made him a T-shirt which said "Future Telstra CEO," and that little thing, that he did, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, right? And he made time for this little kid. That's humility. And he's touched that little boy's life forever. And I think that's worth more than anything in this world. So humility.
I think all of these are such good qualities. I think for me, the best quality is just a deep curiosity in not just knowledge, but in the people around you and in the world. Because I think if you're curious about something, you care about it more. And coming back to kindness, I think that's just so important. So being curious, being empathetic, being kind, I think you can't go wrong with those three.
So just following on from that, self-empathy, it's taken me a long time. You have to be this person, you have to show example, you have to lead for your girls. I consider now self-empathy really important. I think about if it was my daughter or my friend or my sister that was going through this, what kindness would I show her? And you need to be able to show that to yourself because you're worth it. And it's not a linear, it's not a straight line. And I can look back on my career and my ups and downs and my challenges, and I'm still here. There's no set time on it. And even if you think there is, something will come around the corner, and as soon as you think it's going fine, and that tenacity, resilience, but my advice is be kind to yourself.
I agree with all of you, but I've got one final one. Enjoy the ride and have fun, basically. Life doesn't have to be serious all the time. So I think you'd all probably agree with that as well.
No one gets out alive.
Well, exactly. Thank you very much.